WWE has often been accused of taking absolute gold and bafflingly turning it into utter trash. There's also the flip side to this, where WWE has managed to salvage a seemingly doomed talent and make them into something special. With that in mind then, I'm Andrew from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 times WWE turned trash into treasure and you didn't notice. Number 10. Villainous Sidekick to Scrappy Underdog. Debuting in NXT as a dancing, smiling babyface, Becky Lynch thankfully turned heel in October 2014, aligning with Sasha Banks and becoming the boss's lackey. While this was an upgrade on the prior babyface act for Lynch, there was clearly an obvious ceiling when positioned as being, for lack of a better term, a sidekick. Wisely, seeds were eventually sown through the dissension between Becky and Sasha, and this came to a head at NXT TakeOver Unstoppable, where the Irish Lass Kicker faced Banks for the NXT Women's Championship. It was here, as Lynch came up short, where we would really see the Becky Lynch who would eventually land upon the main roster as part of the Women's Revolution. The same Becky Lynch who would be forever positioned as the scrappy underdog, often in the shadow of the likes of Charlotte and Sasha. Most importantly, it was this version of Becky Lynch who would get such a groundswell of support behind her that fans would rebel against a supposed heel turn at SummerSlam 2018, which nicely dovetailed into Becky becoming the no-nonsense, ass-kicking, game-changing man that we all know and love. Number 9. Strikeforce blows the Can-Am connection out of the water. For the World Wrestling Federation, they had quite the conundrum on their hands back in 1987. After being pushed as a rising babyface tag team with championship gold in their future, the Can-Am connection of Rick Martel and Tom Zenk was abruptly disbanded when Zenk quit the company. With the connection in the middle of a rivalry with the Islanders, WWF was forced to think on their feet. The result was the very real departure of Zenk being worked into this feud, with Haku and Tama claiming the Z-Man had quit the company because he was a big scaredy cat. From there, a 2-on-1 beatdown from the Islanders on Rick Martel led to Tito Santana, who was on Spanish commentary duties at the time, making the save, and thus Strikeforce was formed. WWF's handling of this situation made people immediately forget about Tom Zenk and the Can-Am connection, and while the connection was an overact, it was nowhere near as over as the pairing of Martel and Santana, as reflected by Strikeforce getting an impressive near 2-year run together, a 152-day reign as tag team champions, and then becoming embroiled in a heated rivalry when that no-good model turned on Tito in early 1989. Number 8. Trick Willie really is bout it. To say Trick Williams was trash when he first landed in NXT would be unfair, but the real-life Matrick Belton was nothing if not unproven and extremely green. Having trained with Combat Zone Wrestling, Belton hadn't even had an official match before he signed with WWE in February 2021. A standout college footballer, the rookie made his debut on NXT 2.0 that October, being immediately presented as the best pal of Carmelo Hayes. To go back and watch the early days of Trick though, it's somewhat of a slog. There's clearly charismatic potential there, but it comes across as if Trick is trying to say too much too quickly, with him tripping over his words or outright repeating lines. Likewise, Williams' in-ring game was extremely rough at this point, with him used in tag team matches or brief singles bouts. But of course, that was to be expected for someone so new to the business. These days though, Trick Willie has steadily developed into a ridiculously entertaining part of NXT programming, be that on the microphone or between the ropes, and Williams has shown he's got more than enough magnetic star power, charisma, and aptitude for learning to make a major splash on the industry. Number 7. Creating the next great high-energy babyface tag team. Brian Kendrick and Paul London had teamed up for a few months in WWE at the end of 2003, but that partnership dissolved when Kendrick departed the promotion the following January, and when the former Spanky returned in the second half of 2005 and paired up again with London, WWE craftily crafted one of the greatest babyface tandems of the past 20 years. Of course, both Kendrick and London were and are far from trash when it comes to their work, but at that point in 2005, they would have both, as singles acts, just been generic bodies in a cruiserweight division that WWE was losing interest in. Instead, the decision was made to pair these two high flyers up, and slowly but surely they were built up with credible wins and a solid presentation. Before anyone had particularly realised, Kendrick and London were one of the best teams on the planet, would become the WWE Tag Team Champions, and would embark on a near year-long reign with those titles. In putting Brian Kendrick and Paul London together, WWE had quietly assembled the Ruthless Aggression's answer to the Rock and Roll Express, the Rockers, and the Hardy Boys, as in that underdog, energetic babyface pairing who fans forever got behind. Number 6. Leif Cassidy finds out what everybody wants, what everybody needs. In all honesty, the majority of credit here must go to Al Snow and some to Paul Heyman, but WWF clearly upgraded on Leif Cassidy when Snow returned to the promotion in the summer of 1998. Prior to that return, Snow had been utilised as Power Rangers knockoff Avatar, Ninja Henchman Shinobi, and as one half of the New Rockers during his time with the WWF. Thankfully, Al was afforded the opportunity to head to ECW in August 97, and upon agreeing to loan the talent to the Land of Extreme, WWF allowed him to develop a new character. Of course, that new character would be Al Snow, a name used by the wrestler previously before signing with WWF, but this time portrayed as a schizophrenic figure who was forever accompanied by a decapitated mannequin head from whom he sought advice and used for projection purposes. Safe to say, Al Snow caught on fire in ECW, becoming a hugely popular part of the Extreme product. And when Snow returned to WWF ahead of King of the Ring 98, he immediately became a favourite of the market leader's fanbase. So while WWF didn't directly choose this path for Leif Cassidy, by allowing him to find his feet in ECW as a new character, the company had turned trash into triumph. Number 5. Chelsea Green's return was perfect. Many fans were left hugely disappointed by Chelsea Green's long-rumoured return to WWE at this year's Royal Rumble. Of course, that return saw Green enter the Women's Rumble match and last merely 5 seconds before she was eliminated by Rhea Ripley. And with that, the IWC joined together to lambast WWE for its handling of Chelsea and for giving the Canadian such short shrift in what was supposed to be her big moment. While social media groaned in bewilderment though, this all turned out to be a masterstroke from WWE. By having Chelsea Green set a record for the quickest elimination in a Women's Rumble, that gave the former Impact Knockouts champion something to sink her teeth into. For those who'd seen Chelsea under her Laurel Van Ness persona in Impact and beyond, they were well aware of how great she was at going all in on a character. Sure, the Karen iteration of Chelsea Green is clearly vastly different from the erratic, unhinged Laurel Van Ness, but Karen is something that's given Chelsea the chance to showcase how well suited she is to WWE's particular brand of sports entertainment. Number 4. Too much tinkering becomes too cool. If reflecting back on the careers of Scott Taylor and Brian Christopher, some may completely forget that the tandem were ever anything but too cool. But before they were dancing around with Rikishi at their side, Taylor and Christopher were a villainous, generic tag team known as Too Much. After a forgettable year on the roster, a June 1999 episode of WWF Heat saw a promo from Too Much where they rebranded themselves as Scotty Too Hotty and Grandmaster Sexy, collectively known as Too Cool. But it would take until October for the duo to properly resurface on television. Originally presented as dancing, freestyling heels, Scotty and Sexy would quietly turn babyface within a month and soon add the repackaged Rikishi Fatu to their ranks. Without anyone particularly noticing, Too Cool was suddenly one of the most popular acts on the roster throughout 2000, and that would last up until Rikishi turned heel towards the end of the year upon the infamous revelation that he did it for The Rock. Number 3. The Cardiac Kid seizes the moment. Through no fault of his own, Wes Lee found himself going from a main roster destined tag team star to completely lost in the shuffle and facing an extremely uncertain future after his MSK partner Nash Carter was fired in April 2022. Pigeonholed as a tag team performer and a poor promo, Lee found himself in limbo after Carter's firing. Adding to the general sense of doom surrounding the talented Cardiac Kid, his early forays into the singles ranks saw him lose to the likes of Zion Quinn, Sanger, and Trick Williams. Not exactly heavy hitters, right? Then, somewhat from nowhere, Wes scored himself a surprise victory at last year's Halloween Havoc, where he emerged victorious in a ladder match for the North American Championship. In the time since Halloween Havoc, Wes Lee has quietly been cemented as a big deal within the NXT brand, and his presentation as a fighting champion, plus his ever-improving promo game, has brought prestige to that title and helped craft Wes as someone who could very much have a significant impact as a singles act on either Raw or SmackDown. Number 2. Trish proves she's far more than TNA. When Trish Stratus landed in the World Wrestling Federation in 2000, the promotion was at its absolute worst when it came to how it positioned its female talent. Granted, Ivory and Jacqueline were extremely capable wrestlers, but the other women's champions in the time since that belt had been reintroduced in 98, well, they range from Playboy star Sable to non-wrestler Deborah to the 76-year-old fabulous Moolah to Harvey Whippleman in a wig as Hervina. Oh man, it was bad. And for those ladies, they competed in evening gown matches, lumberjill, snow bunny matches, swimsuit contests, and other such tripe that allowed for Jerry Lawler to scream about puppies. The point being, it was a grim time for the women's division when Trish debuted and quickly became the manager of Test and Albert, as in TNA. Still, it didn't take long for Stratus to find herself involved with the McMahons, and she famously was positioned as the mistress of Vince McMahon heading into WrestleMania 17. There, the Canadian turned face at Mania after slapping McMahon, and from there, Stratus started to be featured more as an in-ring act rather than just a valet who occasionally wrestled. As 2001 rolled into 2002 and beyond, audiences quietly began to notice that, Trish Stratus wasn't bad at this wrestling thing. It's testament to the work ethic of Stratus and the training of Fit Finlay, but Trish developed into a really good in-ring hand, and throw in talented dance partners such as Lita Lisa, Molly Holly, Mickie James, Victoria, and Jazz over those years, and Stratus cemented herself as an icon of the industry. Number 1. Fake Big Sexy becomes the Big Red Machine. Yes, in hindsight, we now all very much know that Glenn Jacobs is the man behind Kane, Isaac Yankem, Fake Diesel, Unabomb, the Christmas Creature, and even WCW jobber Bruiser Mastino. But back in 1997, no watching viewer had any idea that the recently debuted Big Red Machine was the one and the same fellow who'd served as Jerry Lawler's evil dentist. The last time Jacobs had been seen on WF programming prior to arriving as Kane, he was under the Fake Diesel guise at the 97 Royal Rumble. Skipping ahead to October, The Undertaker's brother would shock the world by appearing at In Your House Bad Blood, and the rest, as they say, is history. Thanks to a mask and a bodysuit, fans had zero idea that the WWF had managed to turn the utterly trash gimmick of Fake Diesel into what would go on to become one of the promotion's greatest ever characters, one of the most tenured talents in company history, and someone who to this very day is viewed by many as having the best debut ever seen in WWE. And just to clarify, that best ever debut, that was Kane. Absolutely Kane. Definitely not DDS, and definitely not Fake Diesel. So that's 10 times WWE turned trash into treasure, and you didn't notice. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, turn those notification bells on, and come and give us a follow on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. While there, you can find myself at Culture Left Peg, but most importantly, be sure to have the best possible day, whether you're doing something or whether you're doing absolutely nothing. I hope it goes well for you. And if things aren't going so well, I hope they turn around as soon as possible. I've been Andrew Pollard from What Culture Wrestling, and I'll catch you down the road.